Okay, today I thought I would share some ideas with you on how you can start your own plant channel or page like YouTube, Facebook, any of the other social media platforms for either free or very little cost. So I know if you watch houseplant videos, you probably see a lot of those creators with these big, beautiful, extensive collections and oftentimes costly, right? Because we know how much those rare plants cost. And so maybe you're thinking, I really want to start a houseplant page of my own, but I don't have, my own greenhouse, or I live in an apartment. I don't have that kind of space or money to have a collection like that. I thought I would share some ideas with you that would be either free or very low cost so that you can start sharing too. So let's go ahead and get started. I think we can pretty much all agree that no matter if you have a super rare plant or you have, the most basic like golden pothos, we all love to see a new leaf coming out, right? So that's something that you could share is your newest leaf that's emerging. I do that. I love watching those types of videos also. It doesn't really matter what plant. For example, I do mostly Hoyas here, but I'm also I'll watch anything basically. And so you can share about your new leaf that's coming out. You could share about the most recent leaf that's coming out that has a really cool coloring pattern. The golden pothos, they have that cool variegation. It's not a very expensive plant. Almost everyone has one. If you don't have one, you could probably get one for free from a friend or an office that you visit if you ask them for a cutting. And so you could share about the new leaf that's coming out, or a new leaf that's coming out that's getting stuck. We all can relate to that, right? The new leaf you're very excited about, and then it gets stuck and either gets damaged or you lose the leaf altogether. Those are stories that we can all relate to. And again, a golden pothos doesn't cost very much, and especially if you got one for free. So that's one thing that you could share about is the newest leaf that's coming out. And you can also share, plant how-tos. There are new plant people emerging every day, whether it's just, someone that just moved out on their own and they're 18, 19, 20, and they want to propagate a plant. You could share, again, with going back to your golden pothos, you could just share, how do I propagate this? You clip between the nodes, you show them the aerial root, you talk about how you can stick it in water or directly into a potting medium of your choice. You could share an update about a cutting that you've taken and the roots that it has now. All you need is like a little jar on your counter. So again, if you don't have a lot of space, that's still something that you can share about. Along the lines of how to propagate a plant, you could share what type of care the plant needs, or how you care for your plant. Where do you let it grow? Do you keep yours by a window? Do you have a grow light? You could share that kind of information too. One thing that's pretty much free if you're already going someplace is plant shopping videos. Those seem to do really well on the platforms, and you don't even have to buy anything. You can just walk into Lowe's, you can walk into Home Depot, and especially if you stumble upon one of the new like unicorn plants that's out, you don't have to buy it. You could just video it, you could talk about it, and people love seeing those. And then they'll say, where is this plant? What store is this? It does get a lot of engagement. So, besides the gas of going somewhere, or heck, if you lived close, you could ride your bike. If say you're going to a lunch spot and across the street is a Lowe's, you can capitalize on that since you already spent the gas to get to that lunch place or maybe to your job, and just go across the street. You can go to Lowe's at 9 o'clock at night after your job and take some videos and share them that way. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Along the lines of capitalizing on somewhere you already go, for example, I went to our local rec center. I was already going there, and in the entryway, they sort of have like a 2-story atrium. It's like their lobby, but the ceilings are basically all skylights. And so they have these, the rec center is 30, 40 years old. So they have these really, really mature plants in this atrium, and it's a basic plant. It's a Schefflera, and one I think is a ficus or something like that. So they're not fancy, they're not rare, but they're very, very mature. So you know, I took a video of that. It took me 90 seconds to take some B-roll video, and then I can edit it, cut it up how I want, and talk about it when I get home. Again, that was free. I was already going to the rec center for something else, and so it didn't cost anything else on top of the activity that I was already doing. And also, I think it's like $5 to go into our rec center. And you don't even have to pay to get that far because that's in the lobby. So really, I could have just gone in there for free and then, you know, not done anything. But there's mature plants everywhere. There's mature plants at coffee shops. There's mature plants in apartment complexes. If you stumble upon one, take a video. No matter the plant, I feel like plant people love seeing mature plants. So if you, again, back to the golden pothos, if you have a golden pothos at home, but you've had it for 10 years and it's huge and bushy and full, share that. Just share you holding it up, giving it a little wiggle so the leaves shake. We love seeing mature plants because that's where we want our plants to get. And it's always fun seeing like a huge, giant, mature plant somewhere. So those are all free. Just, you have to keep your eyes open when you're out and about, and you'll start stumbling upon these more and more and more once you start looking for them. And again, it's very low cost. And then if you're doing these plants out in public, you also don't have to house them. You don't have to have a 20-year-old golden pothos taking up space in your house. You can just use these plants that someone else is taking care of. And people love to see that. I love to see it. So that's that one. Along the same lines of seeing plants when you're out and about, like at a coffee shop or, you know, a store or something like that, you could also ask your friends. If you go to a friend's house and they have a really cool plant, you could say, hey, can I share like a photo or video of this on my page? Maybe you could ask them a question about it. I love hearing, you know, how did you acquire this plant? Especially if it's like a really old one. Oftentimes plants are passed down. Someone inherits the plant. They're like, oh, this was my great aunt's. For example, my aunt has this giant Christmas cactus at her house in probably an 18-inch brass planter. And my aunt is the oldest of 6, so she's quite a bit older than my mom. And so I've told her, I'm like, hey, I would love to have this plant. I'll think about you every time I look at it and water it. Every time I make a propagation and I'm giving it to someone, it's a special propagation. So ask them where they got their plant and ask them if you could share a little bit about it on your page. Once again, that's someone else housing that plant, growing that plant, and it's free for you. If they're, people love talking about their plants. You don't want to take advantage of your friends, but if they're your friends, they're going to let you share in that way because it doesn't cost them anything either. And you don't even have to put their face on a platform either, because I know some people don't like having their face out there and having a digital footprint. You could just have them off to the side and hearing about the plant, or you could just write it down and then relay that information yourself. So that's another, totally free way. You were probably going to your friend's house anyways, so gas is a moot point, and you can just talk about the plant. Another one that's free is your imagination. You could share your plant wish list. What's the newest Hoya that's come out, or if you're into philodendrons or whatever, you could just talk about your plant wish list and what's on it, and then ask people what's on their wish list. That's the most recent video on my Facebook page. I've kind of saved up, and I got 2 of my wish list plants. They're not crazy expensive. They've been on the market a while, but I love the coloring and it's been something that I wanted. So I shared, hey, I just got these off my wish list. What's on your wish list? People love talking about their things they want and their goals and stuff like that. And then you can engage with them in the comments. Maybe they'll list one that you haven't heard of and you can say, oh, what's that? So that's another free thing that you could post about. You can also just make memes about difficulties of owning plants, like where you've had a plant for a long time and then all of a sudden it just up and dies. That's a universal experience. It happens to all of us. We can all relate to it. So if you can relay that in a funny and clever way, just making a little graphic on your phone, that's something else you could share. So these are all sort of free or low cost ways that I've thought of that you could start your own plant channel or plant page if that's something that you've been wanting to do, but you feel like the cost or the space or even the time of growing plants isn't something that you can do, but you still love houseplants and want to be involved and want to get a platform going, then it doesn't have to be always buying rare plants and sharing about them. Oh, plant unboxings, or look at my, giant X, Y, or Z plant that's as, big as me. It doesn't have to be, always to the max. You can find ways to share your joy of houseplants without incurring a huge cost. And I just wanted to share that today. And hopefully that helps some of you guys. And even on my channel, we're always needing new ideas as creators. And it's just sometimes you hit those roadblocks and it's hard to think about. So hopefully that information is helpful, gave you some ideas. And if you have been thinking about starting a plant page, I'd love to hear about that, if anything's holding you back, or maybe you just started one. Anyways, let me know. That's it for today. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.